authenticity and really how you show up. And I think it's very obvious to those who follow you, those who are on your team, the heart behind what you do. And then the second thing is your consistency, is that you show up and you are consistent no matter what. And so when people are looking at those who are successful in business, it's like, hey, you know, whether you're having a good day, whether you're having a bad day, whether you're exhausted, you know, when you have that consistency, there's so much power behind the success that you have. And so I have loved watching your journey, Molly. I've worked with you, I've worked with several of your leaders. You are truly a leader of leaders. So I want to say to everyone who's either watching live or on the live stream is when someone is being successful at something, listen to what they say. One of Molly's strengths is she has developed leader after leader after leader on her team. Her team is full of leaders. And so that says something about her. And so I really want to encourage you guys to listen to what she has to say. So Molly, it's all yours.
Oh, awesome. I see Hannah and Rachel and I'm like, oh, yay, familiar faces. Rachel, like a sweet baby too. That's awesome. Hi, Hannah. You guys, I'm so happy to be here. And Monique and Becky, thank you for the really kind words. I was kind of asking them right before this, like, what do you think that this group needs to hear? And they said, this is a group that is really eager to learn and implement. And they they want the knowledge and they want to go apply it to their own businesses. So what I really want to chat about today is how taking action has just like given me a lot of confidence, because I don't think anyone has a lot of confidence when they start. I really don't. You might feel confident in like the product or the boot camp group or whatever it is that you're offering. But in terms of like selling it to someone else or getting people to join your team, you're kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I felt that way throughout the whole first year. And some days I still feel like that way, like things are always changing. And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing right now, but I know that I can figure it out. And so when I first started, I was very much, I was a spectator versus a player. And what I mean by that is I would get on calls like this, and I would get on my team call. My upline ran a weekly team call. Every Monday I got on that. I would scroll on the team page and I would see like rank advancements, and I'm like, and I would read things, but I was just kind of like a sponge and then not doing anything with it. And what changed me was I went to my first event, Beachbody called them Super Saturdays. And I went to my first one. It was about 2 months after I was a coach. So I had been spectating for 2 months. Like, I don't think I had made a sale. I think I had posted a few things, but I was like kind of doing it in the dark, even though I had plenty of knowledge. Right. And I got to that event and the speaker there said that she had like tried to coach in the closet for a little bit. And she was like, I was just hoping and praying that like people would like flow into me and, I wouldn't really have to talk about it, but I was just like, I was going to be secretive about it because, stigma or whatever. And she's like, that didn't work. And she's like, I asked myself, why am I not sharing this? And it was just all out of fear. And I sat in the audience that day and I was like, well, this is me. And that's exactly what I'm doing. It's just like literally just fear is holding me back. And so I went home and I said, there's no point in me getting inspired and taking the time to just like sit on my phone at night doing nothing and not do anything with it. And so I just started to act, and it was so messy. And looking back, it was so bad. But, that's how you get good at something. I have a lot of people join me and they're like, when I do something, I want to do it really well. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Who doesn't? But you're not going to get good at something unless you just try, and right now I'm on TikTok. I'm kind of a beginner over there. And I'm always like, well, we're going to try, and I'm going to get better. And now someday I'll look back at those TikToks and be like, wow, what was I doing? But that's how we learn. And so I heard once B- content is better than no content at all. And I just tell myself that all the time. I'm like, anything is better than nothing. And I pay attention to every post or reel or Instagram story, whatever it is, podcast as a data point. And I just kind of look at, okay, how did that go? Not great. Okay, we're not going to do that again. Oh, little bit. Okay, the right people are liking that. Like I'm very observant in my actions, and I don't overthink them, but I use them as data, and then I just quickly move on. And so I paid attention to that in the beginning, and I still do that today. And then I started inviting. And this was the part that just changed my business pretty, I don't want to say overnight because nothing happens overnight, but within a week, I had signups because I started to actually talk to people about it, like one-on-one in the DMs, genuine messages, not copy and paste stuff, but like genuinely going out and talking to people about what I had to offer. And it was action that just moved me through the fear. And so then I was probably like, 4 or 5 months in, and I was like, I'm not really scared anymore. Like, I'm pretty excited, and I still don't know exactly what I'm doing, but my confidence was so much higher, not because of personal development that I read or team calls, but because I was actually doing the work and taking some of the action. So maybe you've done some of that, and maybe you're like, hey, I get it, but I feel stuck and it's not really working how I want it to. Or here's a big one, and I Monique had a podcast on this, I need to listen to it, but what used to work before isn't working now. Welcome to the club, right? This happens all the time, and it's going to continue to happen. And so I also think it's fun to play around. And it's like, I have an entrepreneurial mindset versus an employee mindset. And this is something that I've worked to develop. But if you can train yourself to just trial and error and adapt or die, right? It's like, okay, well, that doesn't work anymore. So now we try something else. It actually becomes kind of fun. And I think it keeps you fresh, and it keeps you not complacent, because I don't really want to do the things I was doing 5 years ago anyway, right? I like to play around with reels, and I think TikTok is kind of fun, and I like to change up my invites, and I like to really focus on, am I attracting the right person? And that person is kind of always evolving for me because I'm always evolving. So who I brought on to my team in the beginning looks a lot different than who I bring onto my team now. And that's also an example of, you've got to change. So entrepreneurial mindset versus employee mindset is something that really helped me in the beginning, because I'm a pretty black and white thinker, and maybe many of you are too. But in network marketing, A plus B does not always equal C. And so, Monique or Becky or me or whatever, we can say, go send 10 invitations and use this wording, and maybe one of them will say yes, or you'll make a sale, 1 in 10. That might not happen. And, the invitation that Hannah sends is going to sound different than what Molly sends. And so really teaching yourself just to trial and error it until you get it right. And I think that does take finding your own voice. I know when I started my upline, like, she gave me some scripts that we call them scripts. Like, this is examples of what you could say to people. And I started using those, and sure, it helped me, and it was a structure and a guide. But until I just started to tweak it a little bit and make it sound like Molly and make it really feel genuine and authentic to me, that's really when my sales started happening. And so let me just give you an example of an invitation, because I always think this is helpful if maybe you haven't done this part yet. It's a part that you will need to do. But if I see someone following along on my social media consistently, like maybe they're watching my stories or inviting, or, voting on my polls or something, I will absolutely reach out and be like, Hannah, I saw you got your workout in this morning too. Like, so proud of you. Let me know what kind of workout you did. I know I've seen your name coming up quite a bit lately. Love having you here. I'm not sure if you're just being an encourager or if you had some interest in the health and happiness groups that I lead. If I sent you over some info, would you want to take a look? Something like that. And to me, that feels supernatural. It doesn't feel salesy, doesn't feel annoying, but it's like me, and to Hannah, that might be like, I wouldn't really say that. I might say something different, but try and adapt and try and adapt. And yeah, there's a numbers component for sure. So you got to keep that in mind too. But I'm just constantly doing this and paying attention as I go. I also think we are in an interesting time in the world right now where network marketing can be so elevated if you do it right. And if you have this mindset. And the mindset is, we are in a recession, going in a recession. They're saying that's like 9 months. That's not going away anytime soon. And so a lot of people, when we're in this kind of state of the economy, will go inward. Even if they don't have to, like even if money or whatever isn't an issue, they'll just go inward, they'll retreat, they'll get quiet. They don't want to show up. They don't want to work on themselves, and if you can teach yourself to move through the hard, whether or not recession is affecting you at all, if you can teach yourself to move and be the example through others during that, and use this business as the opportunity that it is to bring people in, another income stream, supplemental income stream, work on themselves, I think that's really inspiring. And I think the right people really want that. But it's a time where a lot of people will shut down. A lot of network marketers, right? They will go inward. Oh, just like, I don't know, the world is weird right now. So like, I'm not saying so, but I do care. I just think you can also use it to help and use it to elevate versus just retreating or like being paralyzed by it. So where there's challenge, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think the seat that we're sitting in is like really high opportunity right now. Yeah, Anya, the retraction. I think everybody sees it. And I think it's honestly, in no matter what kind of business you're in, but hello, we're in an opportunistic field here. We have an income opportunity. And so it's just like, it's kind of a gift, but you have to be talking about it like that. Otherwise people don't know. I mentioned in the beginning that what held me back was fear. And I think this is true for a lot of people. It's like fear and the mindset of like, oh, well, I don't know who wants to join me, or I'm not really good at this yet. And what I really taught myself to do is to use my fears as a superpower. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But your fears are so relatable to other people. And as you move through them, they begin to kind of lose their power and you get your power back. So you get your power in the first place. So let me explain what I mean. When I was starting my business, I was working full-time in accounting, and I had this mindset or this fear that if I shared about this side thing that I was doing, this coaching while I was working full-time, like people would think like I didn't care about my full-time job and that I wasn't being like respectful and that I was going to like jump ship on my corporate job at any moment. And I just also felt really like boring. I'm like, well, I work my side business in the morning and then I go to work and then I come home and make dinner and I work my side business for like an hour at night. As like nothing, this is super boring, but it's not really boring. It's really relatable. Like that's what your people are going to do too. It's probably the life that they're living. And so I just started to show peeks into my day on like early morning at the kitchen table with my coffee cup. Like I'm working on my business, I'm about to go into my accounting job for the day, but I was like working with some of my coaches and I just started talking about it really authentically, like for what it was, and no, it wasn't really sexy and it wasn't glamorous and I wasn't on a beach or anything or like, in a beautiful Instagram house or anything like that. I was just like showing what I was doing. And so then I would go to work and then at night I might show myself like at my desk, like getting on a team call or whatever. But as I started to just show that and talk about it, I realized, wow, this is really relatable. And this shouldn't be a fear of mine that like, it's not exciting or glamorous. I can use this as a superpower because also, if I bring someone into this is probably what they're going to be doing, right? They don't have all this time in the middle of the day to like sip their coffee and sit in a pretty office. Like this is what they're going to be doing. They're going to be doing it in the power pocket. So I need to explain that. Too normal, too boring. That was my story for a long time. Like, oh, I just don't have anything to share, but share the normal and share the boring because it's not boring. It's really relatable. And then I also, I don't know if you guys have like product examples or testimonials, but I always thought that my story wasn't drastic enough. Like I didn't have a big weight loss transformation. or, I was already like kind of into health and fitness before I became a Beachbody coach. So I was like, oh, people aren't going to think like this has done enough for me, but it transformed my mind like again and again. And so I started talking about it beyond the physical, and that brought a lot of people to me as well over time. So whatever your story is and whatever's like holding you back with it, you just got to share it for what it is. You don't need to add drama. You don't need to, you don't need to do any of that, because wherever you're at is going to be relatable to your people. So whenever I have a fear around something, I like to write it out. Like I just like to take my journal and write like what the fear is. And then I explain, I talk myself out of it. And I write that too, just like a 1 page, maybe even half a page. But that really helps my mind to like flip the switch and like, no, it's not boring. It's actually very relatable. Other people are there too. This is how you're going to attract people. And, you just like kind of convince yourself of like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, instead of staying in that fear, like paralysis. I always say the time is going to pass anyway. And so, you're sitting, maybe you've been sitting here on your network marketing business for a year, but like you haven't really done it, but you're still here, right? A year later. And so obviously you want something from it. And maybe life has happened and maybe this didn't go exactly how you wanted it to, but you have the ability to transform your life with this at any given point, right? It didn't change my life in those first 2 months. I just wasted a lot of time. But in the first 5 months and then in the first year, I started to become a different Molly. And so when I was early on, when I was building my business, Steve and I, we took a trip around the world. And I always share this story because it's just like so indicative of the society that we live in. But we traveled for 6 months, and during that trip, we changed so much because, we were seeing all these different cultures, and we were like, oh, we're going to do life different. And this is how we want to live when we get back. We're like making all these like dreams and plans for our life. We were seeing like beautiful sights of the world and not so beautiful sights of the world. And our minds were just opened and cultured and all of that. And when we got home, we got off the plane, and then we went to a restaurant with both our parents and our siblings. And we were just like, telling them about the trip for like, I don't know, 20 minutes maybe. And then immediately the conversation was about politics, the weather, it was like, we're like, and it was just like nothing had changed at home. We love our parents. That's not the point of the conversation, but nothing had changed at home, but we had changed so much. And I think that's the story of network marketing is nothing changes unless you change. Right. And so our lives, we got back from that trip and everything did go different because we lived a lot different. We got different jobs. I started coaching full time. Like it was completely different. But if you just sit there on your hands, the time will pass anyway, and nothing will change. It's like that saying, change nothing, nothing changes, right? You signing up as a distributor, as a coach doesn't do anything. But if you really lean into it and let yourself change and let your mind go there and send your invites and make the posts and talk about the business opportunity during a recession, things can really change. So for me, complacency is one of my biggest fears in life. And whenever I notice that I'm not changing or I'm not growing, I start to feel unhappy and I just start to feel like stuck and bored. And it's always like my internal cue to be like, you need to change, you need to grow, you need to do something different. You need to try it a different way. You need to change up your routine. You need to find a new success partner, change. And maybe that can help a lot of you too. So it's also when I feel complacent and bored or whatever, that's also when my inaction will kick in and I'll be like, I'm good. This is fine. I'm pretty good. I'm comfy, cozy. And I do not like feeling that way because I know what's on the other side of that. And it's like stagnation, really. So inaction, I always say, is also a decision because people will go, oh, I'm like so afraid. what if this happens? And what if this happens? What if this person says this? What if my first coach quits? Whatever. We worry about all these like risks and these what ifs, and then we decide not to do something. But that's also a decision that you're making. And then if you decide to do nothing, there's no growth and there's no change. So I always say inaction is also a decision, but think about the cost of that. The cost of that is you stay in the exact same place. So what I would say, and my challenge for you today is if your company has a business activity tracker, which I think most of them probably do, of like in Beachbody, we call them the vital behaviors, is to go sit down and fill that thing out as soon as you can. And I would do it once now, if you're able to, and I would do it once again in the evening. Because the faster you can get yourself into these habits of, I did the tracker again, I sent 5 invites, I sent 5 more later on. I made a reel, I made a post later, like whatever the more you repeat the actions of the value drivers, which probably for most of us are our marketing and our inviting or following up, whatever you need to do, the faster you're going to get really good at them. And the faster you get confidence and you move. And a lot of times it's not even really about the results, I've learned. Like, it's not really even about if you make the sale or not. It's about, did you do it? Because that action keeps you kind of coming back for more, right? It's kind of like a workout. You don't see 6-pack abs the first day, but the next day and the next day you're like, yeah, but I'm doing it. And this feels kind of good and I'm doing it. And then in 3 months, 6 months, you're like, wow, my body looks different. It's the same like delayed gratification that will happen in your business. So find the challenge that works for you in terms of like people will say, how many invites should I be sending? Or, and I'm like, however many it takes to get to your goals really is the answer. But what I did for a long time just to get tactical, because people like tactical, is I sent 20 connections every single day. And by connections, I mean like touch points, like, Rachel had a baby. Congrats, Rachel, on your baby, and I would like make a note that I touch point with Rachel. No expectation, not trying to make a sale, not doing any of that, just like touch points, connections, genuine connections. And then 10 invitations every day where I was actually asking people to join my business or to, join my team or join my boot camp group, that kind of thing. But 2010, I did that every day for like at least 3 years. And that is grit. Like sometimes I still do it when I need to like amp up my numbers and stuff. And I can get that done in about an hour and a half. If I sit down and set a timer and go start to finish and don't look at anything else, I can do it in about an hour and a half. So it's like, that's not hard. Probably all of you have an hour and a half that you could spend on this every day, but it's like, it's a crazy discipline muscle that has to be worked. And then the more you do it, the faster and the better that you get at it. So I'm not saying you have to do that, but find the challenge that works for you and then take action, and don't let inaction be your decision, because that really gets you nowhere. So with that, Monique and Becky, that's what I had on my notes, but let me know questions or if there's anything else you want me to touch on.
Oh man, I literally have like a whole page here of notes. This was so good, Molly. This is so good.
Good.
Yeah, we'll open it up for questions. Becky, anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I love it. So amazing. You can obviously tell just through listening to you, and I'm sure anyone like on your team would attest to this, but you are a leader among leaders, meaning you're so inspirational. Like, you are setting the standard for what other people can see as possible. And I love listening to you because it's like you're not afraid to get your hands dirty and do the work. And I think too, like acknowledging that, like this, saying like, this is what it's going to really take. Like you have built a phenomenal organization from what I've been told. And at the end of the day, like, you know, kind of, I was saying earlier before we got on that I was like, you know, I personally think one of the podcast episodes that you recently did, it's like the anti-hustle like culture thing is kind of toxic because it's like painting this picture that like you can just like dilly-dally at your way to success, when in reality you can't. You have to really be willing to put in the work, but then you're going to get to a place where you have built this life of your dreams, and it's more of, you know, managing and evaluating and saying, okay, I actually need to have this season of push for like a little bit, right? Like you said, to kind of maybe get your numbers or like stack things the way you would like for them to be so that you can enjoy. So thank you so much. This has been amazing listening to you.
Good.
Yeah. Do we have any questions in the community? And I will look on Facebook as well. If you guys want to unmute and ask a question, now is your chance. Now is the time.
While we're waiting, I have some questions.
Okay.
So I have two questions specifically. What would you say to encourage that person who, when you share the story about how you and your husband went and traveled the world, and then you come back and it's like your family is still in the same place that they were before. And so for that person who they go to Super Saturday or they go to a convention or something and they come back and they're so excited, and then whether it's a spouse or a friend or a family member, you know, somebody really just discourages them, or their environment is one where they don't feel like there's a lot of support. What encouragement do you give to, because this is something we hear a lot. So for that person that's sitting there thinking, okay, I wish I had the confidence and the boldness to step into the potential of what I see is possible and ignore all the other voices, what encouragement would you give that person?
Yeah, Debbie Downers are big hurdles, Anya said. Yeah, they are. But they only are if you let them, you know. And I know sometimes it's hard when it's people like really close to you. I've had it happen several times. I actually just had it happen recently. But what will happen, and you'll know you're growing because of it, is in my mind, as said person was like saying some stuff, and I was just like, I do not agree with this, you know. And I was like, I don't even want to have this conversation. But, and so this is what were my thoughts in my head. And I was just like, okay. And I just like, I didn't even want to, it wasn't worth it, you know? And I think that's how you'll know that you're really moving past it. And I got in my car and I left this person's house and I was driving home and I was like, I really don't agree with what she said. And I don't care. I'm moving on. Like it makes no sense for me to fester on it. And this is someone that I really love. Right. And that has nothing to do with it. I was just like, I have a growth mindset. She has a fixed. That's really what it boils down to. And I'm like, that's fine. She doesn't have to understand this. If she ever wants to, she can. But in the meantime, I got to stay on my rocket ship and like not let this silly little thing get me down. She wasn't even trying to be snarky. She was just, you know, and I was just like, but it might be your spouse. It might be anyone, but what will also happen, and I don't like to operate out of a you just got to prove them wrong mentality, because you need to prove yourself right. That's really what it boils down to. You need to prove yourself right. And if you can stay, like I said, in your rocket ship and in your growth mindset, and it's not even that you need to drag them with you, because if it's your spouse or whoever, what's going to bring them with you is if you shine your light so bright that they get some of it. And if you're so elevated and you're growing in a feel good way, they're like, you know what, I kind of want a piece of that, you know. But if you're trying to convince and you're trying to drag and you're trying to push, it's not healthy for a relationship. And I don't actually really think it works. You know, it's like nagging 101, don't do it in marriage. And I think it's the same thing with your business. A lot of times it's because they care about you so much that they're just confused, right? They think you're going to get hurt from it. It's non-traditional. They don't understand it. And so if you're going to prove it to anyone, just prove it to yourself. And as you do that and you make sales and you grow your income, the downers also start to go away. You know, I had a lot more of them in the beginning, like friends, family, my parents. no one understood what I was doing, but I was just like, and then eventually they did understand what I was doing, right? Because I brought it to life. And so I think the first 2 years, whatever it takes, there's going to be a lot of that, but it does kind of go away. It never fully goes away though. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting comfortable being misunderstood, not
Yes.
trying to prove yourself to people.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me personally, like I literally had someone message me today, sending me like something very mean. And I was just kind of like, okay, that was kind of weird. And the way it's funny, and Monique walked a lot of this journey with me, but when I did make the transition, a lot of people did not understand. And I was very misunderstood. And it got me really defensive at first, like I was just very much like needing to prove myself to the world and to them. And eventually it's almost like I processed that, pain and all the stuff that I walked through and came to a place of compassion.
Yeah.
Like they don't necessarily understand. And it was just more of like their ignorance. And I, kind of like what you said about people sometimes operate out of course, fear. And so I was thinking, okay, they're either, fearful for how it's going to impact them. They're fearful for, just in general, like the future, or they're worried about me, and scared for how it can affect me and my family and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's funny because now, like today, I reacted very differently than, a year ago when I was getting some of those exact same messages. And so I think you're exactly right. Like as we grow, the way we respond is going to change. And I think we're never going to escape it, and that's just like, it's like Satan's always out to get us, and he's just finding ways that'll, he thinks is going to impact you and affect you, and uses people sometimes that we love, even though they see it as, trying to watch out for us or whatever. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something else you said that I really, really loved is the 20 connections with no expectations and the 10 invitations. You said I did that for 3 years. So I think, for those who are listening live or on the replay, like, I'm like, that is it. If someone's looking for what's the structure, what do I need to do? I think that giving a practical example like that, where you don't give up, you don't just do it for a week, you don't just do it for 2 months, but to say like, this is what I did for 3 years. And if people really were doing that for 3 years consistently, they would be in a totally different place in their business. So I think that's very encouraging. Also, just a practical question regarding that. How do you track that? Do you have a certain system that you that you feel like helps you stay organized?
Yeah, I just had a spreadsheet. I still have a Google sheet with a date, connections, and invitations. And it's just like a down the sheet kind of thing. But a lot of my coaches will try that and they won't like it. And I'm like, okay, then change, because there's a bazillion ways to track. And I always say it really doesn't matter how you're tracking as long as you're tracking. And I heard this from another coach, but an empty tracker is an empty paycheck. And so I'm just always like, do I have names in my tracker? And, because if I'm talking to people, my business is moving. If I'm not talking to people, my business is not moving. So yeah, whatever you can sustain in a consistent way, and don't make it fancy. You don't have to have all these highlights and all these notes, and it's like names in tracker, go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also love that you said it takes you an hour and a half, because it's like, just get it done. People sometimes think it's going to take all day or whatever. And if you make that a priority, and if you recognize that that's an income producing task, you see your perspective changes on it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
All right. Do we have any questions on the Facebook, Becky, or anyone else here have any questions?
Yes, we have Irene asks, what would you advise is a great tactic for growing a network with the purpose of attaining business builders?
Like adding to your network probably is what that means. Growing to your network.
I would imagine so, like maybe getting outside of your own like circle, I would assume, for the purpose of attracting business builders. So people who are wanting to actually build.
Yeah, well, I always say that the best way to attract business builders is to be a business builder. So making sure that Irene or whoever is showing, you know, what it takes to build a business. And what I mean by that is you're actually showing the work, and you're showing, like I said, the early morning hours before your corporate job or sitting at the table at night. I mean, you can just hop on your stories and share a little bit about what you're doing. But the more people can connect the dots with like, okay, she takes it seriously. She does it, you know, between these hours and these hours. I see her doing that pretty much every day. They understand that that's what it's going to take. And so when they sign up, they just kind of know, you know, and they kind of flow right into it. But then I would also say, and this is a more of a like what's changing on social media is I think you really have to pick a horse and ride it in terms of niche and like what you want to be known for, because that's really where social media is going to. Like, what if I go to Hannah's page, what am I getting from it? And it can't be like it used to be where it's, oh, some kids and some recipes and some about your product and some about your essential oils. It's like, it has to be one specific thing that you feel really confident in talking about, and that all your topics are kind of around, because it supports our binge watching habits. And so I think it's the marketing, like the storefront marketing on her feed. And then also, is she consistently sharing about the business in her stories or in her feed? But I think that's what's going to attract people, and then let them know that there's a business opportunity too.
Yeah, so good. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, thank you so much, Molly. We really, really appreciate it. And I know everyone has been very blessed by you sharing with all of us today. I would love for you to share how people can connect with you, your podcast, and follow you in all the.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. My Instagram, that's like where I spend most of my time, is molly.asplin. And then Becky was talking about the podcast. It's called the Dream It, Do It podcast. And it's a lot about it's business. So if you liked this, you'll probably like that, because it's really geared towards women who want more out of life and who want more fulfillment. And some of it's tactical, some of it's more mindset. But that's between Instagram and my podcast. Those are my two favorite places to be. So good. I'm glad it was valuable, Ashley.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, go dream it and do it.
I love it.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Guys.